Hey guys, Devin Gridley at AllFather Fitness, and today we're going to be talking about something that I, just like everybody else in the world, overlooked, and that is warming up. We're going to go over the misconceptions about warming up, how to warm up properly, and how people warm up not properly, obviously. And basically, I'm going to dedicate this video to every single coach that I've had, and for people that have watched my fitness story or whatever, you know that I've played a lot of sports, so I've had a lot of coaches, and over my years being an athlete and going to the gym and learning all that I have, I've learned things about warming up, especially the misconceptions about warming up. Now, if you play a sport, which I assume a lot of you have or had before or are going to, a lot of coaches, they say you have to warm up before you go and do whatever. Like, say you're doing football. Every single football team you're going to be on, they make you do a warm up. Doesn't matter what coach you have, they make you do a warm up. And some of them do it right, some of them do it wrong, some do a mixture of both. And we're going to talk about the wrong way that a lot of these coaches make you warm up, and that is stretching. And I've always hated this, and this goes back since I was first doing any sport, and people would make me stretch, and I hated stretching because I always felt like I wasn't like at my maximum potential of what I could have been. And people's main argument for this is, oh, if you stretch, you're gonna decrease how many injuries you're gonna get when you're playing your sport or whatever. I find this so incredibly dumb because if you think about it, if your muscles something that you can stretch, so let's take a muscle, like let's just take my hand for example as any muscle in the body, and you're doing a sport where you're explosive and you need to be at your maximum potential, you're running really fast, you're in football, you're hitting a person, you need to catch the ball, whatever, right? If you have your muscle like this, and it's like this every single day of your entire life, and then right before you're going to go perform at 100% your maximum effort, you're going to stretch the muscle and you're going to make it looser. This makes absolutely no sense to me. It never has in my entire life. And when I started learning about everything about fitness, really, I didn't dive deep, but I ended up learning that stretching actually increases your risk of injury, especially when doing explosive movements such as sprinting really, really fast, because of your muscles aren't used to being stretched. They're not like that all the time. The only purpose you need to stretch is because your muscles are tight. So if your muscle's like this and you're really sore, your muscle's going to bunch up. So you need to stretch it back into the position it was. But if your muscle's perfectly fine and then you stretch it, you're not going to get the maximum potential you could have out of that certain muscle, whether it's your legs, your arms, whatever it is. So this goes to every single sport. I know a lot of, if you end up watching this and you're like, hey coach, this guy on YouTube said stretching is really bad for you, you shouldn't do it. He's not going to listen. I know he's not. No coach is. But I want to bring light to the fact that stretching is not really good for you unless you're tight. That is the only purpose you should ever stretch for. You shouldn't stretch any other purpose than that. Stretching is not a warm-up. It actually increases DOMS, which is how sore you are. I don't know the super scientific term of it. I'm not going to go over all that, but soreness. So if you're stretching a muscle, the reason a muscle is sore is because it's getting torn. If you stretch a muscle enough, it's going to create micro tears, and that's what's going to make you sore. Micro tears make you sore. So if you have a bunch of little micro tears, you're going to be really sore. You're going to have to stretch more, and it's just not good. So you don't want to be stretching before you're going to work out or you're doing a sport. So now that we've gone over how stretching isn't an actual warm-up and how that you shouldn't be doing it basically unless your muscles are bunched up and they are sore. If your muscles are sore, you should be stretching. That is important. But if they are not sore and you feel perfectly fine, do not stretch. So now that we've covered that, how do you properly warm up? Now, if you're doing a sport, go through the motions of doing what you would do in that sport at a very lower intensity. So obviously, if you're doing sprints, if let's say you're in football or track, every sport basically, you need to run as fast as possible. So you need to go through the motions of doing that. Just warm your muscles up to it. This is called preloading the muscles, and this also correlates to the gym. So you want to preload your muscles, and what you want to do before this is get your joints ready. So how do you get your joints ready? You warm up your joints by moving them through their range of motion. So your shoulders are a joint that can go practically 360 degrees. This is why the joints in the hips, which are both the same, they're ball and socket joints, so they can go 360 degrees. This is why you see the most injuries in that, because they're the least stable. So how do you go about warming up the tendons, ligaments, and muscles in there? You have to preload them, and you can do this with well, you have to do it with relatively light weight. You can't do it with any weight. Relatively lighter weight. And you don't even have to use weight. You can just move them through their range of motion. That's what's important. But do not stretch. That is not good. It is not going to give you any beneficial gains in your sport or in the gym. So talking about the gym, we're going to specifically correlate to the gym now. So preloading your muscles. And you already warmed up your joints. You've moved them through the range of motion. Now you need to preload them. So how do you do this? You moderately add weight, and then you do like 1, 2, 3 reps, maybe not enough to exert any type of force. You should be an RPE of like 0 to 0.5. You should be putting absolutely no work into this. It's just getting the muscle ready to lift, and you should be doing this specifically to what lift you're doing. So if you're doing the bench press, do the bench press. Don't do a chest press, don't do a shoulder press, do the bench press. Focus on your technique being perfect with these super light weights when you're preloading, and then just moderately add weight until you get to your working sets. That is the absolute best way that you can warm up right there. Now, a lot of people, they don't want to throw on a 25 and add 5 pounds, add 5 pounds, add 5 pounds. They don't want to do that. So what I recommend doing is moderately increasing the weight, but increasing it a little bit more than moderately. So if you start with 25s, or you start with the bar, a lot of people start with the bar. You do a few reps, and you're feeling good, okay. Now you just add 25s on each side. So that's 50 pounds, but your body is still able to keep an RPE of a really low number while doing that, especially if you only do 1 to 3 reps. So you do that, and then if you're feeling really good and you slap on, 45s after, it's going to feel a little bit heavier, but if you practice this, you do a 45 set, you do it for 3 reps, and then you go for a working set with those 45 plates on each side, you're going to get at least another rep in, maybe even 2 reps. It becomes way easier because when you first lift it, it's going to feel a lot heavier, but the second time you do it, and I really encourage people to do this, get like a sheet of paper and write down your lift, and then the next week or the next time you hit that muscle, the bench press for example, try it again, but do a set before with the same weight, but only do like 1 or 2 reps, and then go for your working set of like 8 or 10 or 12 or whatever it may be. And you'll be able to lift more, I promise you, okay? So, now that we talked about how to properly warm up, we talked about the misconceptions about how stretching is not good for you and how not to warm up by going 100% or doing something like stretching. What do you do to warm up if you are sore, if you're in the gym specifically? The best way to do this, there's these things called trigger points in your muscles. I took a physical science class, and I learned all about this. I found it very, very interesting, and this is when I first learned that stretching isn't really that great for you. So there's these things called trigger points, and if you're thinking about your muscle, you think about my fingers as muscle fibers that make up a muscle, right? So this is a muscle, and these are all muscle fibers. Some muscle fibers aren't going to be torn, and they're not going to get bunched up, so you can have muscle fibers that do this. So this one's bunched up, but the rest aren't, or maybe this one is, or whatever else, and it's just not how it's supposed to be. So one could be bunched up, and how do you get rid of this? And it's going to be really sore, but it's an odd soreness. It's going to be in a specific part, and this usually happens in places like the back, really. The back is probably the most dominant place, or the legs. The legs and the back are probably the most dominant place for trigger points to happen. So how do you go about getting rid of that without stretching and getting these muscles overstretched and getting this one back to normal? Because that's obviously not good. You don't want to overstretch your muscles, because I went over this. You can't perform optimally how you want to perform. So how do you go about getting rid of this trigger point? This is where foam rolling comes in really, really handy, or if you have a little tennis ball or something like that, and you roll on it. And I'm sure a lot of gyms have these nowadays. I know my gym does. I've been to a few other gyms. They all have foam rollers, and if they don't, you can go to you can go to Dick's Sporting Goods, Sporting 5, or whatever, you can go to any sporting goods store like that, and you could probably find a foam roller. And if you can't, buy a little tennis ball, works exactly the same. But if you use a foam roller, this is how you get rid of trigger points. It's able to basically massage. That's basically what it's doing. It's massaging this, so it's not stretching anything at all, but it's able to basically push this out, or I guess I should do it this way. It's able to basically massage it back into place till your muscles performing optimally, and you're not going to be as sore during your working sets. Eventually, it'll bunch up again. That's kind of how it works. It's kind of like a cramp. You think of it kind of like that. You stretch the cramp out, but you shouldn't be stretching. That's the whole point about doing sports or going to the gym, is that you shouldn't be stretching like that. So if you're able to get your hands on a foam roller, I would highly suggest using that when you do feel that way. And it's very precise. I'm sure a lot of people felt it where their muscle isn't sore, but a certain part of it is, or if you go and touch it and it just, that's where the trigger point is. It just kind of is sore in that specific part, not the entirety of the muscle. So you get rid of it by doing foam rolling, and then there you go. Your muscle's back to normal. You can do your warm-up sets. You can preload your muscle. Then you can go into your working sets, finish your work off, your workout out great. Gosh, that was a mouthful. And then you're good to go, and you'll never have problems with that. So we went over the misconceptions about how stretching is bad for you, and the misconceptions about warming up, how to warm up properly, and how to warm up properly if you're still feeling sore, specifically to the gym. You can do this in every sport, really, but I know that a lot of coaches aren't going to say, you can go up to them and say, hey, this guy on YouTube said stretching is really bad for you. And even if I plus 100 other people on YouTube said stretching isn't bad for you, there's always going to be a coach that says, no, we're stretching, we're going to go through our stretches, whatever. I've had maybe, I think, one coach where we did actual warm-ups where we'd, sprint lines, and then at the end we'd stretch, which is really, really good. And that is because we had a actual physical therapist at my school, and he was the board, like the athletic board director person. So he basically told other coaches, hey, you can't be doing that. And, he was qualified to say that because he had the education to do so. And they obviously listened to him because he's a lot smarter, especially when it comes to athletic ability like that. But not all schools are going to have that, unfortunately. But now that you know, maybe when you're doing stretches, maybe don't do them as hard. I know you might get yelled at, especially if you're in football, but it's going to benefit you a lot more, and it's going to decrease your risk of injury, which is obviously really good. So I think that is all I could possibly cover, but in the future, I actually want to go over how to warm up specific body parts, and once I'm able to get a camera and I can take it to the gym with me, and I'm able to edit videos and do all that good stuff, I want to actually show specific body parts, how to warm up the chest, how to warm up the shoulders, the legs, all this good stuff, and how to do it all properly, how to foam roll properly, just do all that type of stuff. And eventually I'll get to that, but as of right now I can't. But I just wanted to make this as a little intro to that, and I'll make it probably a little playlist. But yeah, like I said, this is all I got for this video. If you liked and enjoyed the video, please leave a comment down below and like the video. If you aren't subscribed already, please consider subscribing. I'm almost at 200, and that is crazy, crazy, crazy. I only started like 6 months ago. I've made almost 100 videos now, which is pretty crazy, but it would mean the world to me. And if you are subscribed, please hit the bell notification so you can be notified when I do post videos, because I know I'm not posting them every single day, so you're not going to get the notifications as much, which is unfortunate. But if you have the bell clicked, you're going to have an increased chance of getting a notification from my channel. So please, if you haven't done any of that, watch the other videos that are going to be right here, and I will see you in the next one.